Hi everyone, I'm Mélisande Mual, publisher of the papers, and I'm so happy to be back in Berlin at the MPE, one of the best shows for merchant payments in Europe. And I'm delighted to be here with Mathieu Altwegg, SVP, Head of Products and Solutions Europe at Visa. So hi Mathieu, how are you today?
I'm very good. Yourself?
I'm well, great to see you again.
Great to see you again.
So really enjoyed your keynote, by the way, this morning. Great topic about programmable payments and agentic AI. So let's talk a bit about sort of the strategic shifts do you believe? So what is the strategic shift you believe will most fundamentally change payments over the next 24 months?
Thanks. It's a great question, and I think we can build on top of what we discussed this morning. If I step back, I think it's programmability. I think we are moving from payment being a static moment to payment being something that can respond to an intent. That's, I think, fundamentally. We are moving from clicking and confirming to simply describing what we want the outcome to be, and then we let the system operate and act on our behalf. So therefore, it's really difficult to talk about the future without talking about AI. I also mentioned the speed at which we see things changing over the last 12 months. 12 months ago, I was not really using any Gen AI platform to support my daily life and my daily work. No, it's constant.
Yeah, we can't live without it.
Of course, we were preparing for the TED Talk. We were, of course, going through these tools that we use every day. And it's becoming more and more true and real in payment too. The discovery to buy journey is already transformed by this platform. We know that shopping assistance or enabling you to shop better is already the second highest use case on this Gen AI platform. We also know that the number of users, monthly active users on the top 3 platform is 1.5 billion today. 6 months ago, it was half of that.
Yeah.
So the curve of adoption is like no other technology and nothing we've seen before. What's interesting with programmability is that to a certain extent, we're already doing it today.
Yeah.
You and I are programmers of our lives. You set subscription, you have a monthly wires between your bank accounts, you curate your playlist. And so we think that we are moving away from being users of payments to being programmers of our financial lives. And that's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's not just for payment, it's for the bigger context. And so as a consequence, that promise that we had a long time ago of personalization and being contextually relevant, that's actually becoming much more of a reality. And so these are the changes that are what's happening beyond payment that is fundamentally changing payments today.
So, and what is the impact for merchants? How does it impact their, basically the checkouts, their whole operations?
Yeah, well, there's so many things.
Yeah.
And what this could mean for merchants. We also talked about, that big convergence in these 3 dimensions. So maybe I'll reuse that because it's interesting and it's helpful to structure because it's also relevant for the merchant. We talk about identity.
Yeah.
We talked about choice and in the terms of convergence of rails, payment options, and funding source. And we talked about the experience itself. So we can dig into these, and think about what does that mean for a merchant. First of all, with the experience, we see the finally the arrival of these agents that are acting on behalf of consumers. And so they are transforming the experience and what this experience looks like. Here, there are a couple of really interesting learnings over the last 12 months. We thought 12 months ago that everybody will be already making these agentic-based transactions. It's not there, but I think it's actually happening really fast too.
Yeah.
I think in 1 year of time, so 6 to 12 months, all of us in Europe would have, would have experienced an end-to-end agentic transaction. And so for merchants, you need to adapt, you need to be ready for these new agents, these new third parties to be involved in the transaction flow. Many ways for you to do that, but being able to recognize them and to interact with them is key. Of course, it also triggers the question of trust and how do I trust that this agent is acting on behalf of my consumers and doing it in the proper way? When it comes to choice, there is again so many things that can happen, and what does that mean for the merchant? We talk about stablecoin. I think merchant will use stablecoin not necessarily as the mean of payment for them to accept payment, but as a tool that they can use to better drive their business. Merchants, businesses, can leverage stablecoin for faster settlement,
Yeah.
which is great to free up liquidity and manage their treasury. They can leverage stablecoins to pay suppliers cross-border in geographies that are usually difficult to reach or certainly not able to reach in an instant way.
Yeah.
So you can see optimization happening around choice, but also enabling the consumers to be able to pay the way they want to pay on these merchants in the first place. We already see that happening, but I think it's still super early. We're still relatively analog. You pay with debit, on a debit use case, but enabling that choice is going to be a good role that the merchant can play. And that's also how you differentiate yourself. If the consumers can truly express their financial freedom on this merchant's surface, then the merchants win too.
Yeah. So Mathieu, as a merchant, what should I start doing as of today?
Yeah, I think there are three things you can do very concretely. First of all, you need to be fluent in tokenization.
Yeah.
Because tokenization is the new, form factor for card credential. You need to be comfortable and accept them. We, evolving tokenization to be agentic token or agentic ready. We're adding programmability to our tokenization stack. And so that's number one. It's table stakes. We're not going to be processing agentic transaction on PAN, e.g., expose 16-digit credential. That's the recipe for disaster and exposure to fraud. So that's number one, leverage tokenization. Number two is, there are tools to give you access to this credential, and that's the way Click to Pay is evolving. The secure, seamless checkout solution is becoming, with programmability, a digital native credential that merchants can retrieve on demand. And that's really powerful because you can, retrieve it if you're an agent, you can retrieve it if you are a merchant, and then you can start using this credential in many different checkout use cases. We see checkout evolving from, this manual pan entry, modern checkout solution to in-browser different checkout options. And then the last one is authentication. And how do you leverage also the next generation of authentication solution? And so here you need to start adopting passkey-based authentication, which basically is bringing biometric authentication upfront as a merchant so that you can take advantage of that.
Yeah.
It's way better because it supports agentic transaction. It enables to have that frictionless experience. It moves the authentication upfront, and you can do many things with that. And then it's going to be a base for more to come.
Yeah.
Because we've discussed as well that passkey is connected with verifiable credential and digital identity will enable other use cases for merchants.
Yeah.
You'll be able to, verify age or verify eligibility. You'll be able to delegate, payment purchases in a B2B flow, or even be able to authenticate multiple times across multiple channels.
Yeah.
So we said it, tokenization, baseline, but it's evolving.
Yeah.
Using, Click to Pay, but as a digitally native credential that you can retrieve on demand. And then finally, authentication, but using the latest technologies. So passkey, leaning into passkey, because that's going to be a platform for many more to come.
Yeah. So what conversations are increasingly happening at the board level among merchants today? And which risks do you think are still underestimated?
I think, merchants are businesses and they want to run, successful business.
Yeah.
We talked about merchants and SMBs have been retooled. And that's something we've seen over the last 5 years. They are so incredibly more sophisticated than they used to be.
Yeah.
They used to be, my craft is my business and business is not really my craft. We may have said that last time we discussed. Now we see incredibly that they're becoming crafty at business. And they do that by having, retooled themselves. I think in the boardroom, that becomes one of the primary discussion is what are the tools, what we need to do next. They are sophisticated, systems or enterprise. And so the same questions are now applying in that these trends that we talked about. How do I become Visa Agentic Ready?
Yeah.
And maybe that's a good segue because we introduced on Tuesday the Visa Agentic Ready program, because we realized that we need to not only put the standards out there, but we need to help
Yeah.
issuers, acquirers, merchants over the time to be ready for this new agentic experience, to test in live environment and production environments for these transactions to happen, to ensure that their systems can, adapt themselves, be tweaked so that they recognize that these are legit transactions, but they are different and nothing we've seen before. And so that's true for issuers, but that's equally true for merchant. And so becoming agentic ready is one big topic in the boardroom.
Yeah. And which risks do you think are still underestimated in that journey?
I think risk-wise, you're gonna need to, there's a few things that comes to mind. They look for scale. And so how do you ensure that you are not spreading yourself and don't get access to that scale?
Yeah.
That's the other thing. With complexity, you're going to need to make intelligent trade-off.
Yeah.
As in the boardroom, you need to ensure you are enabling the right technologies first that give you scale.
Yeah.
And you also have to navigate that increased complexity. It's true that there are at the moment 6 different main standards. Some are actually, more consistent to one another. Some are going to get more, interoperable inside of VMVCO for card-based transaction. But I think you're going to need to make these more, articulated trade-off as a board member in a merchant boardroom, because you need to bet on what gives you the right scale. So that global, local, trade-off is going to be quite interesting. Of course, I think fraud remains a topic. And while we've seen an incredible decrease of fraud on card rails, we know that fraud still operates and continues to evolve. The same Gen AI technology that we are all excited about and are taking advantage of, the other side of the coin, the dark side of the coin, is also taking advantage of that. And so I think that's another risk, is that as a merchant, am I exposed to, a non-traditional, non-recognized type of fraud, and how do I equip myself to support that? So here, I think it's equally one of these trade-off, big decision-making. How do I, protect myself? And which solution gives me the right scale to be able to, combat fraud today, and more importantly, combat fraud tomorrow, because it's going to take a very different shape.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mathieu, for sharing all these insights. And I can't wait to next year, because then we will basically see, how this Visa Ready program.
We will do a live transaction together.
100%.
And then, there'll be plenty more to discuss about. Thanks so much, Mélisande.
Super. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.